Hello, I'm Matt Williamson. I am back here on Pop Goes the 60s to discuss the Beatles single Now and Then. I waited a few days to do this. I wanted some of the hype to die down and to take in a little bit of what I was seeing going on around me. And I wanted to just expand on a few things that really are outside of the song, because there's really some adjacent topics involved with this that I think are more important than the song itself. Now, my expectations for the song were rather low going in. I had heard the demo, and when I heard it was going to be redone and worked on, I started listening to it again. And I can totally understand why George Harrison called it fucking rubbish back in '95. And I concur. I don't think this is a strong song. I think the melody is weak. There's a reason why it probably didn't wind up on either Double Fantasy or Milk and Honey. And I think the lyrics are even worse. And it's not what I expect from John Lennon, which is why it didn't get worked on much further. It needed more work. And the guys that worked on it, Ringo, Paul, Giles Martin, George, Jeff Lynne, there's only so much they could do to this song. And they just couldn't make anything out of this sow's ear. They couldn't make a silk purse out of a sow's ear, as the saying goes. And I know some people would disagree with that. But if you look at, I'm just listening to the song itself, forget the videos, forget all this nostalgia. That's the thing people can't separate. And that's what I want to talk a little bit about here on this channel. Now, one of the things that seems very clear to me with regard to this song is Paul McCartney really wanted to get this song finished. And it was halted back in '95 by George, and they had to have consensus, and they didn't get it. And Paul always threatened to finish it off. Well, this seems to stem from some unfinished business Paul McCartney has with John Lennon. A score that he wants to settle that John Lennon was taken early, and there was a lot of unresolved things that probably needed to happen for him to feel okay before John left. But you don't always get to decide those things. And it seems to me that continuing to sing with John Lennon, if you will, like he does in concert and all those things, and it seems like he's trying to fill some empty hole that he just can't seem to fill. And strangely enough, he's already done this. He did this with a John Lennon recording back in '95. So Now and Then is really doing something again. This is not a new thing. The technology obviously is better, and they can save the original recording, but that's about it. Now, Apple seized the moment. I think they were very aware of hey, you know what? Wait a minute here. If we put out a new Beatles song, that is far wider appeal than, say, a Rubber Soul box set. And what we see Apple trying to do, at least this year, they are very, almost desperately trying to broaden their fan base to younger people. I totally understand that. That's the proper thing to do. However, what they're butting up against here is a little bit of the Beatles' legacy. And when you're curating the legacy, you want to make sure you're doing it properly. And I question whether this is proper treatment of the Beatles' legacy, particularly when you take a song Now and Then and you put it on the Blue Album next to all those wonderful classics like Let It Be, Strawberry Fields, A Day in the Life, as if it belongs with those songs. And I would say that it does not. Now, one of the things Apple did do here that I thought also was very shrewd is that they released a mini documentary on the making of the song, which is about 12 minutes. The following day, they released the song. And on the third day, they released the Peter Jackson video. And by putting that song kind of juxtaposed in the middle of these videos, it really maximized the nostalgia. All the imagery, it's very hard to separate that from this release. And that's what they were marketing. That's what they were counting on, because the song isn't very strong. What else do you have but nostalgia? Now, one thing Apple was counting on is the cottage industry of YouTubers like myself who use this material for our own channels and provide free promotion for Apple and the Beatles and all these other artists. And a lot of these younger people that Apple, I think, is trying to capture as Beatle fans will see these videos when they normally might not hear of a single download of a new Beatles song. So this does get this into the ears of new people. The problem is that the people doing the videos oftentimes, I think, are very insincere, drowning in a sea of their own drool and feigning crocodile tears just to get clicks. pretending like this song has meaning to them, as if they were old enough to have lived during the time when the Beatles were at their most relevant. And you see this on these thumbnails where you get the sad face or wiping at the tear. You know, all this stuff, this reality TV bullshit that permeates the meme world that we see on YouTube. And I just don't think this is good for the Beatles' legacy. I think this makes a mockery of it.
A huge day. I never thought I would have a moment like this in my life. Today, after 40 years, I know, it might seem like I'm exaggerating, but that is a 10 out of 10 song, y'all. That is one of the best songs I have heard this year, full stop. I'm not just saying that.
You know, coming into this, I didn't expect to cry. The way that the song was built and the way that it sounded, even the lyrics, you know, everything sounded exactly like their first few singles. I loved everything. As you can see, I can't stop crying.
Most gut-wrenching, heart-rending, soul-breaking, inspiring, beautiful video I've ever seen. Still in shock.
Okay, I gotta be honest. The only problem with this song is that it ends and that it's only 4 minutes long. I honestly didn't expect it to be such a masterpiece. I'm speechless.
People were already like saying like they were crying listening to this, and it just feels
I really get emotional.
Yeah, me too. By the way, you want to hear some wicked wild stories about Vegas? You gotta check out my channel.
And if you want some hotness, check out my fantasy show on my OnlyFans.
Unbelievable. Beatles originally from Liverpool. At the Beatles on everything. I think it's mostly because I'm such a huge Beatles fan. This is going to be an obvious score, but song was incredible. I love the fact that John takes lead on the whole thing. The strings are awesome. The way it sounds exactly like we never left the Beatles era too, which is the coolest part about it. 10 out of 10. 10 out of 10.
And I mean those lyrics, John knew what he was doing. He knew, you know, okay, we're gonna put out one more song, but it's at the right time, you know. The piano making it so it wasn't able to come out in the 90s. It was all part of like the bigger scheme of it, you know.
Yeah.
I mean, gosh, those lyrics.
I know you're having a hard time for him. We're speechless. Like,
yeah, we weren't expecting her to cry. We
I
need some tissues.
haven't cried that much in a really long time, and I feel like I need to just go in the other room and just like really bawl out.
There are some YouTubers out there that have such large followings, they don't need to worry about continually kissing the ass of Beatle fans. One of those would be Anthony Fantano. Now, Fantano's got cumulatively over 3 million subscribers. And I usually turn to this guy when I want to learn about new artists because he knows way more about that than I do. And he had some interesting things to say about this song.
I just don't really like the way they made the track sound. Like, the bass and drums are fucking booming and blaring to the point where it's like, why did you even put in all this effort to suss out John's voice if you were just going to like smother it in this mountain of damn bass? Plus, Paul McCartney's like throwing licks out there that I just don't really feel like match the vibe of the tune John is writing. Like, what about his voice and his piano chords make you want to go, like, are you kidding me? This is just, ugh. It's so claustrophobic and it's so closed in. And again, it feels like John's voice got dug up just for it to get buried with other stuff. It's a simple song. It's a direct song. And I feel like production-wise, this really should have been a less is more moment.
I'm sure many of you have heard of Rick Beato. He's got well over 3.5 million subscribers, and he's more of a music theory guy. But he did weigh in on this video, and he also had some interesting things to say that were not wholly positive.
The Beatles were one of the few groups that stopped playing at the right time and never did a reunion. This obviously is not a Beatles reunion. There's only 2 Beatles that are living still. I'm glad that it's out there, and I really enjoyed it. But maybe sometimes things are better left undone.
There are clusters of other Beatles-centric YouTube channels out there and podcasts that are intent on controlling a narrative.
I got a text from a friend of mine. Oh, I'm a big Beatle fan. I was kind of underwhelmed. I'm like, well, whatever. Like, you have to understand what this song is for the legacy of the whole Beatles career 60 some odd years later. Come on. Like, this is it. You know, come on. So if you accept it on those terms, then you won't be disappointed. And the three of us and many others are not. We love it.
Those terms he's talking about are his terms. So if you are underwhelmed like his friends, that means you don't understand what this is.
4 minutes and 8 seconds or whatever it is. Listen, that's what it is. That's the legacy of the Beatles in a nutshell. And if you can't appreciate that, then you have no emotional heart in you.
So he's trying to put over that this 4 minute and 8 second song is the Beatles' entire legacy in a nutshell. And if you don't agree with that, then you have no emotional heart. I mean, talk about condescending and elitist. I mean, what is this guy talking? This is all emotion. That's all these guys have to offer is pure emotion. There's nothing analytical about this. And these are some of the things that we have to put up as fans who have a dissenting opinion. And one more thing. Emotion ain't evidence if you're trying to use that as a way to describe whether a song is good or not.
I've said this a million times in the last 2 days. Is it the best John Lennon song ever? No.
No.
Is it the best Beatles song ever? No. Is it worthy of being in their canon and being the last word on the Beatles? Yes.
Yes.
It is. And I wish people would just stop trying to psychoanalyze it. Just enjoy it for what it is.
So what Mitch Axelrod is saying here is that this song Now and Then is canonical. You don't need to analyze it any further. You just accept it for what it is. Well, what is it? That's the whole question. That's why we want to talk about it and analyze it.
It's the perfect ending. It's such a great way to top off the legacy and say, we're done.
Yeah, they're done all right. I totally agree with him there. Mitch did bring up a good point, though, with regard to canon. So who does create the canon? Who decides on what the canon is? Well, it's not the fans, nor is it the critics. The canon is created by the artists. So the artists decide what's canon based on how that influences other artists. That's how something becomes canonical. So I think it's premature to suggest that Now and Then is canon. Now I would say that this song, along with Free as a Bird and Real Love, all these songs were done decades after the main Beatles catalog in the 60s. And therefore I don't consider them as part of that collective and a part of their catalog, because it was done so much later and without some of the members. Although I would say that Free as a Bird and Real Love, I have never heard anybody argue that those are in the Beatles' main canon. Now maybe they have and I haven't heard it. If anybody has seen that in print anywhere, I'd appreciate you sending it to me. I have never heard that. I'd be interested to hear what they have to say. But my guess is that that argument has not been made. And since it's almost been 30 years, I would say that Now and Then fits in with those other two songs and probably would not be included in the discussion of what is canon for the Beatles. There is an American academic social critic by the name of Camille Paglia, and she speaks on this quite a bit. She is a professor of arts. So that's one of the things that she said as to who creates the canon. And I'm happy to defer to her. The automatic canonizing of Now and Then is an example of Beatles fandom sometimes becoming so insular that it only speaks to itself, and that the people that are brought into certain discussions are only people that already basically agree. I appreciate you making it to the end of this video. And as always, I encourage people to leave comments below whether you're for or against it. Let's get a discussion going. And I thank you for watching Pop Goes the 60s.